I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and welcome to Inner Voice Show. On this episode, we're going to talk about relationship, finances, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm an author and an international speaker. I have hosted my own television show, Inner Voice, in a satellite program for 16 years. Whether it's premarital counseling or through their marriage, how to deal with children, and if they're going through a divorce, to teach them how to communicate better together. In actuality, I think my job is very important to work with individuals and the couples in order to make the most important relationship of their life healthy, which makes them healthy. On my Inner Voice show, I actually interview some of the prominent psychologists and entertainers in English, and I also speak to some of the psychotherapists who are Iranians and the artists who are Iranians, and I speak in Persian to the Persian population around the world, from Iran or Europe or Japan, Australia, all over the United States and Canada, because obviously I was born in Iran.
Where's Dr. Zeine? Dr. Zeine?
Hello.
You also have been trained in my specific methodology and techniques, correct?
Yes.
Are you willing to talk to her after this show?
Absolutely.
And tell her the step-by-step that she needs to do to deal with what I believe is an addictive personality?
Yes, absolutely. The family goes through a lot. For boys who are becoming girls, the fathers of the family suffer. They will keep being confused. They look at all the childhood pictures that they've took of their son, and now they look at somebody who's standing in front of them and supposed to be their daughter. Coming up, I'm going to be talking to a psychotherapist about awareness integration model. You really want to know what that is, huh? Coming up. Stay tuned. Hi. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, psychotherapist, and I'm here with Nasreen Barkhordari, licensed marriage and family therapist. We're going to talk about awareness integration model, a psychological model that I have originated, and Nasreen Barkhordari is one of the first therapists who has actually learned and has been utilizing it with her clients. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. This is an honor.
Some of the major topics that I actually talk to my clients who are couples are first talking about sexuality. Many people don't know how to talk about sex. Concept of communication about it is something that I actually have to teach the couples in how to do. We talk about sexuality. Many people come into their sexuality in a very automatic way. We can go through the whole experience and wham, have a great time, but being with another human being, it actually takes skills. So becoming aware of every area of how we think, how we behave, how we feel, how we communicate with another human being in order to have an amazing sexuality is part of what we also teach in this AI model.
So much of our sexuality.
People don't talk about finances a lot. They don't have a system. They come from two backgrounds of how they actually have created their finances, and I have to help them create a system and have a great communication in how to follow the system. Another main topic is when they actually have children. Now remember, two people, two backgrounds, two cultures, two sets of values are coming in, and now they actually have to bring those together, and that's where they need how to communicate, be flexible, and really negotiate on one way of handling their kids. Duet, sometimes you guys are entering each other's space and singing together, and then solo. How does that experience for you?
The funny thing is,
in-laws, we have to deal with them. They're always there. They're going to be there. We didn't marry them, but they came with a package. So somehow we have to really, really work with them. And if I have to actually add one more topic that I've had to deal with a lot of couples and individuals, is addiction? Whether it's an addiction to alcohol or drugs, pornography, cell phone, computers, is one aspect that really, really affects the person's life and in their relationship. With people who are going through recovery from addiction, they've had some sort of a trauma in their childhood. And when we work with the awareness integration model with them, clearing the trauma, the choice and the chance for them to relapsing is really minimized. I have been in the field of psychology for about 25 years. I started with seminars in ontology and psychology almost the same time. And I know you were part of the pilot study that we did, and in the result of that pilot study was that people were actually minimizing the depression 76%. They were minimizing anxiety 64%, and their self-esteem was rising about 43%. Now those are astonishing numbers.
You know, I wanted to go through it. I wanted to experience what my clients would experience. So I asked you to work on me as a model for the group that was being trained.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, you can see more on my website and my YouTube channel. And if you want to contact me, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and welcome to the Inner Voice Show, a show that's about you, about everything that really matters to you. And I talk to experts in the psychology field in the areas that really matter to you and your family. Today, I am so excited and I'm so honored to have Dr. John Gray with me. Let me tell you a little bit about him. I'm sure you don't need it. Everybody knows him around the world. But in case, let me tell you a little bit about him and his new books. Dr. John Gray is the leading relationship expert in the world and best-selling author of Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Dr. Gray's books have sold over 50 million copies in 50 different languages around the world. John's new book, Staying Focused in a Hyper World, Natural Solutions for ADHD, Memory and Brain Performance, provides practical strategies for improving relationships at all ages and stages of life, and that's the book we're going to actually talk to you about. Through his highly acclaimed books, videos, and transformational seminars, John's purpose is to create a world where men and women understand, respect, appreciate, and ultimately work together. Lionsgate Summit Entertainment has purchased the rights to Gray's bestseller Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus with the intention of creating a feature film and TV series. I can't wait to see that. Dr. Gray has appeared on Dr. Oz, Susan Summers Show, Oprah, The Today Show, CBS Morning Show, Good Morning America, The Early Show, The View, The Couch, Fox and Friend Weekend, Good Morning New York, CNN, Politically Incorrect, Larry King, and he's been profiled in Newsweek, Time Magazine, Forbes, USA Today, TV Guide, and People's Magazine. I really don't know anyone who would not know him. So thank you so much, Dr. Gray, for coming to my show and accepting my invitation. I'm so excited.
It's such a pleasure to know you, Foojan. You're an inspiration.
I just want to tell the audience that you've been my guru. I've read all of your books. I've taught them in seminars, and I was so excited that about a couple months ago, I think, about a month ago, we were in San Francisco, and I had the chance to be with you in 6 of the video series from yourtango.com. I just saw some of the video series, and hopefully as they come out, I can show them also on TV, and our audience audience can also see them. But I've done a lot of video series with different experts. I've had a lot of people on my show. I just want to touch base with you and let you know that watching them again reminded me of who you are and your generosity as a human being. Your love, your caring, your authenticity, and you're just like a bundle of care and love and fun and humor, and your grandness, like knowing who you are and just creating a space for people who are around you. And I really want to appreciate you and say that to anyone who's going to ever watch this video.
Well, Foojan, you made my day, my week. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, ADHD. This is the topic of your new book. And obviously, it's been diagnosed so much around the world, and sometimes misdiagnosed, and sometimes overly diagnosed. And then yet in your book, you're saying, well, I think it's even underdiagnosed. So let's talk a little bit about ADHD. And first of all, let's define ADHD for our audience. Say, what is ADHD?
Okay, there's a whole spectrum of what's often being called ADHD, and we'll get into why I believe it's
underdiagnosed because it's affecting people of all ages. It's pretty much the same condition that's affecting children, is affecting the younger generation and their inability to make a commitment and their addiction to things like pornography, their addictions to caffeine, these types of addictive behaviors, as well as addiction to needing that dopamine burst of excitement and pleasure when you first meet someone. But what happens is they have shorter attention span and they're not able to sustain commitment. We see it in older generation. They're starting to lose their memory, and they start having things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. It's just on the rise. It's the same
condition, but at different ages and stages of life.
So what I'm hearing from you is that it shows itself in a different way in children as it shows itself in adult, and as people grow. It just shows itself differently. But you've also talked about 4 kinds of ADHD. Can you please explain the 4 kinds that you talk about in your book?
Yes, in my book I expand the definition of what's commonly known as attention deficit disorder, attention hyperactive disorder. So in children, one form of this would be children who can't sit still. And yet if you take that child and you throw a football back and forth, they can. Or if you put them on a video game, they'll stay focused for hours. So it's not really a deficit of attention, but in a classroom it looks that way because these children become bored very quickly. The dopamine is a brain chemical that gives us focus and interest. So without this brain chemical in sufficient quantities, what happens is these types of children, they just have to keep moving because one thing doesn't hold their attention. But if they're playing a video game which stimulates high levels of dopamine, they will stay focused for hours. Now let's take another type of child, because all children have basically fall into 4 different temperaments. And the next temperament is the more creative child, the more playful, light, playful child. They're going to get easily distracted and disorganized. They mean well, but they don't follow through. They often procrastinate and so forth. So these children are the ones that are considered attention deficit disorder. They'll listen for a few minutes and their mind wanders. When they're reading a book, right away their mind wanders. They don't have the same comprehension. Yet that same child who'll be distracted, if you give them a novel or a book that they're really interested in, they'll stay totally focused. So it's really imbalance of dopamine function in the brain, which is what is often diagnosed as ADHD. However, there's other types of children that are not the active type, not the creative type, but the sensitive type. The sensitive type is not diagnosed, but these are children who are moody, who become depressed, they become cry a lot, they become resistant to nurturing because they feel so hurt. They're more sensitive, and they're also more affected by EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, and toxicity in the environment. And so they have these mood swings and also learning difficulties. This is the hypersensitive child, the hyperactive child, the hyper-creative or distracted child. And then the 4th category is the child who's like a perfectionist. They're hyper-compulsive. They do really, really well in school, but they drive themselves really hard. They often can't be satisfied with anything they do, and so they have difficulty in their relationships. They're never satisfied with themselves or their partner. So these are 4 categories, and as adults we have more of each of those in us, but we definitely have our predominant aspect, the dominant aspect.
Well, it seems like there's a part of the community that is not ready to do anything different with this type of children or the diagnosis that comes up. So the systems are the systems. For example, family systems are that, and then school systems are the way they are. And if you have any other need, nobody's really trying to teach you how to do it, and the child himself or herself doesn't know what to do with it. They're just going naturally with what's going on. So I know that there are behavioral methods who support, and they're taught to the child and the families in order to learn how to handle this type of attention and how to change the concept of attention, how to relate and bring the person into a space that they're really interested so that they can focus versus medicating them. One of the things that you say in your book is they are underdiagnosed, but they're over-medicated. Can you say more about that?
Yes, that was really my motivation in writing this book, because there are really good behavioral things that we can do for children as well as for ourselves to improve our relationships.
Yes.
And we'll get into that. However, when you see it in the media and in the newspapers and so forth, generally what you hear is it's a choice between learning these behavioral skills or taking medication. And in every case, there should be the behavioral education. But what we see is that there's not the media recognition or the public recognition of the hundreds of studies that show there are natural solutions for this condition in children, and I have seen it in adults as well. There's natural solutions that have no side effects. You see, Ritalin and Adderall, these are different types of drugs that are prescribed for ADHD and ADD, and for children who get depressed, and for children who are compulsively never good enough. You know, there's different drugs that are applied, and what people don't know and what parents aren't told is that these drugs have serious side effects. And it wasn't until Harvard University just a couple of years came out and found that there's actually brain damage which gets produced by taking these drugs they were giving to children as well as to adults. And that brain damage, I have a more optimistic way of saying it. It's brain injury, because I still think the brain can be healed, and I see that the brain has the power to heal if we stop hurting it and we start giving it the missing nutrition that is always associated with ADHD-type symptoms, whether it be in children or in adults or in aging adults.
Well, you also talk about oxidative stresses that cause ADHD and some mental challenges. When you're talking about oxidative stress, is it the environmental chemicals that you're talking about that are around?
Yes, that's having the major effect on us, which is when the food has pesticides added to it, particularly the GMO foods, the corn and the wheat and the soy. These are in all of the packaged foods, and what's happening is that these products they're treated with something called Roundup, and Roundup is a very powerful pesticide which has something called glyphosate. Now it's legal because glyphosate do not injure human cells, but glyphosate injure and kill the good bacteria in our gut, and so our digestion is not the way it's designed to be, and our body can't make enough of the important brain chemicals, and particularly dopamine. To digest the proteins to make dopamine is very, very important. In addition, if you don't have good digestion, your body can't manufacture a protein called glutathione. Now, all children with ADHD have extremely low levels of glutathione. Anybody with autism, anybody with has none, anybody with Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, the body is not making this very important protein called glutathione that protects the brain from oxidative stress. And what oxidative stress does is just a nice way of saying brain cells are dying. The connective tissue is getting thinner. And so what happens is the brain can't fully stay focused unless it has a huge stimulus to stay focused. Otherwise, it becomes scattered in a variety of ways, as I mentioned. And as we grow up, what we see for men and women, it shows up very, very clearly as a challenge in our relationships. We see so commonly for women feeling overwhelmed, feeling like I have to do this and I have to do this, and it's hard for them just to relax. That's the adult form of ADHD for women. For men, it tends to be the inability to shift from being hyper-focused. So men get hyper-focused on their work. Then they come home and get hyper-focused on their computer. They get hyper-focused on the TV. And they're not able to sort of shift gears into a more relaxed place where they can hear their partner's experiences, where they can listen and have longer attention span. They tend to have shorter attention span. Another symptom is they procrastinate. They have to wait until there's enough danger. When you wait to the last minute, there's the danger. It may not happen. That danger stimulates dopamine in the brain. And of course, then we have the phenomenon of people being addicted to caffeine, addicted to alcohol. And the people that get addicted to alcohol, it's because their DNA actually can convert alcohol into dopamine.
Oh.
So we've become this passive society dependent upon stimulation as opposed to generating dopamine by doing healthy behaviors and loving interactions and working hard.
So this is what I'm hearing from you. I'm hearing that the chemicals that are in our environment and the behaviors that we have acquired via technology or different aspects of our life, basically, and the system of living that we have created for ourselves has also added to all of these types of diseases, which are now parts of mental diseases, because our body and obviously psyche are very connected. And the same way that it might show itself in our physical ailment or body, it's now also showing itself into our psyche and the system of behavioral system and into diagnosis of mental illnesses in that sort. And those are the ones who are causing ADHD, different types of mental illness, and in an older age, shifting into dementias and Alzheimer's, and in totality, memory loss. And in order for us to be able to work with it or reverse it or at least minimize damage, and hopefully the brain having the ability to create itself again, rebuild itself, is that if we shift some of our behaviors into healthier behaviors and shift our nutrition and environment into a healthier one, there's definitely a hope of reversing and shifting this whole issue with ADHD and memory loss.
Absolutely. That's a great summary. And a few terms that people may not be familiar with is this a very important protein called glutathione, which is absent in children with mental conditions, mental challenges. And in America, it's just huge, the problems with, 1 out of 5 boys being diagnosed and medicated. They're medicating children as young as 6 years old. They never even have a chance to not experience what normal brain function is, because you have to realize these medications are amphetamines. And just because it's prescribed by a doctor doesn't mean it doesn't affect the brain in the same way amphetamines affect everybody else. That's why they're illegal. They cause brain injury. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have long-term studies to see that there are brain injuries. So I had to write this book because I just feel that people are being lied to when parents are being told there's no side effects of these harmful drugs. And, certainly every drug, that's why they're prescribed by doctors, has side effects, and you only do it in a crisis situation if you have no other alternative. But now they're given out like pills. 50 to 60% of the students at Stanford University and Harvard University are taking Ritalin or Adderall. These are amphetamines. These are cocaine-like substances. They call them smart pills. Every writer has known this in Hollywood, is you take amphetamines and you write all night. Yeah, it makes you temporarily smart, but then it causes injury to the brain, and it certainly interferes with our ability to have natural and normal relations with, in our personal romantic life, in our work life, and so forth. It causes these extremes where we depend upon hyperstimulation to feel alive, rather than normal stimulation, having a conversation with your children, spending time with your family, talking, playing games, working hard, interacting. These are the normal things of life, and we're losing it. And you hit it on the nail when you said it's not just the environmental toxicity, it's also combined with are electronic stimulation. Give a child with ADHD an iPad and you'll see them calm down right away. In the same way, you'll see them calm down temporarily if you were to give them sugar and a dessert. So instead of children being motivated to please their parents, the mother says, I want you to come to dinner now. Now the mother has to say, okay, if you come to dinner and eat your vegetables, you'll get a dessert. We're having to motivate our children with sugar, which also has this high dopamine potential, but over time it weakens and then you need more and more sugar. In the same way, you give them the iPad, then they need more and more of that stimulation, as opposed to natural, normal stimulation, which is their parental approval. Parents are happy with me, they're proud of me, and I feel good I've done something to earn their approval.
Well, all of these are in the Staying Focused in a Hyper World book that is out on Amazon.com, or you can see it on MarsandVenus.com and receive that. And it was interesting because when you and I were talking and you said you wanted to talk about this book, and I really get the passion that you have about it, because usually you've started many of your books and most of them are about relationships, about men and women, and then about men and women in business, and a lot of it had to do with their intimate relationship, their communication skills, and it seems like this became such a passion for you to really want to educate the world about the misconceptions that are about this, and that in one way or another being over-diagnosed and over-medicated in a way, and other kids are not even necessarily ADHD, but because, like you said, it is a pill that they can utilize when they have to do high performance, like they're in law school or pharmacy school or medical school or just pure college, and they think that they gotta stay up for 4 hours and they see their friends using Adderall, they figured it's the best thing that I can do, and then from there it becomes part of the habit of consistently putting something in their brain in order to produce those types of results. And the other conversation you were just having, you also said that we can do different types of behaviors which are more normal and healthier with no negative side effect and a hell of a lot of positive side effects that can be done in relational pieces. Can you say more about those?
Yeah, well, I love what you're talking about, and there's a YouTube video which explains how good video games are for children, that it will improve the mind-body coordination. And they go, yeah, it will also overstimulate the brain like taking a drug, which will stimulate the mind-body coordination, but then there's a natural way to do it, which is go out and play soccer, go out and throw a ball back and forth. That will also increase your mind-body coordination. Also, limit your intake of processed sugar foods. That will also restore normal function of the brain, which is optimal. That's what we want. What you get is this surge when when the students are taking their drugs, they're getting a high stimulation. And if there weren't side effects, you go, okay, well, that sounds fine. But the problem is, people don't understand that when you give the brain hyperstimulation, it performs better temporarily. It changes the brain so that normal stimulation doesn't give you a sense of aliveness, interest, pleasure, or fulfillment. You now become dependent upon more hyperstimulation. You have to take more sugar. You have to watch more pornography online. And the interesting thing for young men in their 20s, they can't even do studies in America to show the difference in a teenager's brain who hasn't seen porn and a brain who has, because they can't find any teenagers that haven't been using porn. It's so pervasive in our society, and what we know is that when you watch pornography, for example, the same part of the brain gets stimulated as processed sugar and cocaine. The same part of the brain is being stimulated, giving you high levels of pleasure. And when you get high stimulation, your body reacts, and it reduces the amount of receptor sites in your brain. It changes the brain. It's called habituation, which means this high dose no longer gives you the thrill, so you need a higher dose. And normal dose, like being in a relationship for several years, it can't give you that high dose of dopamine, but it can give you a good dose if your brain is responsive to dopamine. But when your brain is desensitized, you suddenly get with your wife who used to be turned on to, and now you're bored. Now you need some sort of external, even books are recommending, go watch pornography, get all turned on, and then get turned on to your partner. It will work temporarily, but this is the wrong direction. What we want to do is make our brain sensitive to normal levels of dopamine. One of the things that causes dopamine to rise is newness. So in the beginning of a relationship, you have this newness, you have this dopamine, and then it starts to, the newness goes away in the relationship. So you have to have a very healthy brain to continue experiencing pleasure from the less newness. But if you go out and overstimulate your brain, then now your brain has less receptor sites to experience normal pleasure. And this is challenging, and many teenagers, they get addicted to masturbating, watching pornography, and the more they do it, the less they're able to be turned on to a real woman. This is what happens, is our ability to be turned on to normal stimulation diminishes as we depend upon hyperstimulation, which, by the way, a digital stimulation does produce a lot more dopamine than normal interaction.
John, I have the million-dollar question. And I know you've got the million-dollar answer, which is, in a world that peer connection is there 24 hours for children, for teenagers, for young adults, they can be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and talk to their friends consistently, and get from them all of these amazing cues of, oh, use this porn, you know, watch this video, I got this pill for you, and this and that. What would you suggest to a parent that is going to try to change the environment, have more organic food, change their environment of the house with less chemicals, and really be conscious of doing what you just suggested in your book, which is staying focused in hyper world? What would you suggest to a parent that is dealing with not only their own child, but this concept that the child is going to keep being pulled by their peers and all of these new and fast-serving concepts, such as pills, such as other chemicals, such as behaviors that are, as you say, are going to be worse for their condition versus having them be used to a normal functioning of dopamine and actual normal functioning of pleasure?
You know, what's amazing is long before we even had the hyperstimulation of our technological age, along with the junk food, which feeds this addiction, long before that, in a very natural world, and most traditions, taking a day off, taking a day to unplug, was actually a part of most rituals. It's taking that day off. And now we need it more than ever, is to unplug for at least one day, if not 2 days, and let your children not be able to use the technology for a day. Play games, play board games, do reading, go out in nature, do sports, do competitions, do fun things with your family, cook a meal together, go eat it outside. Is that be in the nature, be in the natural world, which is where we've evolved from for thousands of years. We've got to reconnect with nature. What happens is when you're in a natural environment as opposed to an electronic environment, different hormones get produced. In a natural environment, you're going to have more estrogen getting produced. There's an awareness of our dependence on the earth for our aliveness. There's an awareness of others and that we have to act accordingly to others. That creates more estrogen. It creates more oxytocin. These are hormones that mediate dopamine, so dopamine levels don't go to skyrocket levels. If a man is watching pornography, his dopamine levels could be 3 or 4 times higher than if he was having sex with his wife. I mean, this is like the shocking thing, because when you're with your partner, dopamine levels will go up a certain amount, testosterone will go up, but you have estrogen and oxytocin, more the feminine hormones, to balance it so you don't become too extreme in one direction. So real life experience moderates that. So the question is, are your children addicted to high dopamine stimulation? All you have to do is say, let's take a day without it. They'll be bored, they'll throw tantrums, they'll be upset, they'll be like a drug addict, and you've taken away their drug.
Yes.
Because there's a physiological withdrawal. And it's very hard for me to recommend this to parents if I don't also have the natural solution that will help the brain adapt efficiently. You know, alcoholics, when they give up alcohol, they often say, I still crave it the rest of their life. What a torturous experience to feel this unfulfilled desire over and over and over, having to use willpower to stop you simply because nobody taught them that when you give up an addiction or a dependence on hyperstimulation, you've got to help the brain come back into balance. You've got to provide extra nutrition, which has been depleted through the hyperstimulation. You have to provide extra healthy nutrition, smart nutrition, that will assist the brain in coming back into balance. And that's what I have spent the last 15 years studying, because for myself, 15 years ago, I'm in my 60s now, 15 years ago, I had Parkinson's, diagnosed Parkinson's, which is the downregulation of these dopamine receptor sites in the brain, and I found a natural way, not by taking a drug, which causes the problem to get worse over time, the brain habituates, but I helped my body come back into balance so it could upregulate dopamine receptor sites, so it could digest my proteins properly and make the dopamine and protect the brain from the oxidative stress by making glutathione, which I taught. There's 100,000 studies on glutathione, which is deficiencies of glutathione are directly associated with all mental conditions of imbalance.
And all the answers in the Staying Focused in a Hyperworld book. Buy it from marsandvenus.com or Amazon. I know you're going to around the world. You're going to Russia, you're going to different places, and Iran in January, and I probably won't be able to get you back on my show that quickly again. But I know there's also another book out, and I'm excited about that. And it's about men. It's about conscious men. So can we also talk about that?
I'd love to. It's right. It just went on Amazon today. People can get it through Amazon, and it's called Conscious Men, and written by me, John Gray, and a friend of mine called Arjuna Ardra. And we have basically taken 12 qualities of we would call masculinity, identified masculine qualities, and show how they need to be developed and expressed in our modern relationships. So these are the qualities of, we might call the more conscious man, the new masculinity, because we men, we have a new challenge. As women have become more masculine, that means they're more independent, they're more self-sufficient. What do they need us for? And how can we help women, and how are we supported? Because a man's role has always been to provide a sense of support for women, and yet today, what do they need us for? It brings out a whole new challenge for men to stay masculine and stay in their power while also connecting with the feminine in a new way. And so what I've seen is men feel more out of work. They tend to become more feminine, and as opposed to knowing, well, what is my role today? So we talk about the new masculinity of conscious men, conscious of their own strength as men, but also conscious of the sensitivities that are increasing in our awareness as we become more whole.
You said an amazing thing. I've really noticed with my clients, and I have clients from all over the world. So I have them from Western Hemisphere, where the equality of men and women have been there for many, many decades. And I also have clients from the Middle Eastern world, where that gap is still huge, and they're attempting for the gap to come back. And then the ones who are assimilating and acculturating from the Middle Eastern world to the Western world. And I know that you've gone across the world, and you have been in so many countries and have come to this way of the differences. And one of the things that I was hearing from you that I sensed it a lot with clients, it's not only that the difference of the role is happening kind of by force, but there's also this piece inside each person. Like for women, they really, really secretly still love the Cinderella concept, and somebody opening the door for them and even providing for them, and feeling having to be the safety and the security of their prince or their king coming and taking care of them. And that's just beautiful, although they also love this independence and the ability to create revenue and the freedom to make choices and do different things. And side by side, I've also sensed men loving that role of the masculine and the provider and the king of the house, and having maybe the last word, and having the financial sense of being able to make decisions on that, and yet enjoying the sense of that whole responsibility as a solo person who has to take on this responsibility away from their shoulders, having someone who's their mate and is with them, and even at times they can just sit down and relax that maybe their woman can take care of it. And sometimes, although they want to have the both world are opposing internally and within a relationship. Is there, do you talk at all about that in the book?
Oh, I think you summarized the whole crisis of relationships today. It's so you clearly presented it, just as I'm talking about in my book, Conscious Men, because just as women want equality, men want equality. We don't want to be these slaves to work. We want to follow our hearts. We want to enjoy our lives. We don't want to feel this huge burden on us. We want to share, but at the same time, we also want to be, respected and appreciated. We want to be providing. We have a role. What is masculinity and what is femininity? And what I see happening is as we grow in consciousness, so that's why my work is very, very popular as women start becoming more independent. That's a sign there's a shift in consciousness, and that's where my work really applies. And women tend to be the ones who step out, and they say, I want to be more independent. Well, as soon as you want to be more independent, that creates new problems. And what I've seen is that is a shift in consciousness. It's like a step of evolution. It's a huge leap in evolution where we leave behind stereotyping, limited conditioned roles, and we're moving into a level of equality where women can freely express masculine qualities of who they are as well as feminine. Men can express feminine sensitivities along with masculine. Now, this is a new leap, but it comes with a whole new set of problems and challenges, because once you have access, if you're a woman, and you have access to your masculine energies and support for being that way, when you're under stress, the easiest thing is to shift into your masculine to protect you rather than go to your feminine. With the feminine power is different from the masculine power. The masculine power is to do it yourself. The feminine power is to get someone to do it for you. So there's two powers. As every individual, man or woman, we want to develop both. But the challenge is when you have access to both, if you're out of balance and you're feeling stressed, women become overly masculine. The testosterone hormone begins to rise, estrogen and oxytocin decrease, and her stress levels get higher. Her ability to feel love, her ability to feel grace, her ability to relax, her ability to be happy becomes diminished, which is now proven. The more educated, the more independent, the more financially successful a woman is, the higher her stress levels. Now, meanwhile, as men basically become able to access their female side, when men are feeling stressed, they go to their female side because they have access to that, which is that somebody else make me happy. So men start becoming more passive. They become irritable when they don't get what they want as a result. They become more dependent upon video stimulation. They become more dependent upon sugar stimulation or alcohol stimulation. They're no longer getting their happiness from sacrificing and working hard and providing. They're going to go to things that make them happy from the outside. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in moderation. But the problem is when men are stressed, if they're not getting the right support in their life, then their tendency now is to go to the female hormones, which when men have female hormones surging, and we can measure this now in modern men, their testosterone levels are much lower, their estrogen levels are higher. What you get is men who are overly moody, they're overly irritable, they have anxiety, fear holds them back, they procrastinate, they tend to become mean. Basically, the worst sides of men ironically happen not from high testosterone. It happens when estrogen is higher than testosterone, and that's now proven. That's new science. But we always thought it was too much testosterone, and in a sense that's true, because if you have, quote, too much testosterone and you're not confident with that testosterone, I mean, there's a big problem, a surge of testosterone, but you don't know what to do, that lack of confidence in what to do, because you don't know what to do, the body will release an enzyme called aromatase and convert your testosterone into a surge of estrogen that causes men to experience fear or anger or grief And then suddenly now they're in emotional pain because they've moved too far to their female as opposed to being balanced in their masculine along with their female side.
So now we have men with PMS along with women with PMS.
Absolutely, we certainly do. And so what we want to do often is treat them like women with PMS, but that's the wrong thing.
Right.
They're men. We need to get them back into their objectivity. As therapists, we're so used to somebody's upset, let's explore their feelings, which is important. If you have a high estrogen, you have emotions, you've got to deal with those feelings. But with men, you have to realize their power, their groundedness, their stability comes from objectivity. So you first, in a sense, when I'm dealing with a man, I want to know clearly what happened, what didn't happen. We do a little analysis of it. Then we go into what are the feelings, because the feelings are there. They have to be addressed. But you don't just lead with emotions with men. You lead with objectivity, which helps, what's the problem, what created the problem, how do you solve the problem, then how do you feel? Whereas for women, they're kind of over in the problem-solving mode. I have to bring a woman back to, okay, we'll get to solutions, but let's first look at the emotions, because it's in the emotions that you connect with estrogen and oxytocin and serotonin, these sort of balancing hormones, to dopamine, to testosterone, and other hormones as well.
So this is what I'm hearing, that at one point we went from powerful men who were taking care of women in the kind of a dynamic of the family. So we kind of had the role of a father-daughter concept. Then we had women who became empowered and became independent and strong. And as this kind of shifted, then the family styles, or many of them, became more like a mother-teenage concept. And what I'm sensing that you are proposing also in your book is that we really, for a marriage, we need adult-to-adult concept. So that means that both people, both men and women, have to have their balance of femininity and masculinity, and not only for them to know and notice and become aware of how they go back and forth between it so they can take care of themselves and communicate what they need from that place to their mate, but also for each mate to get to know this about the other person, their mate, and to know how to maneuver and where to go and where not to go, so to keep this balance and not feel dominated or being dominating or being dominated. And you explained it beautifully from the hormonal level and a biochemical level and the emotional level that they go through. And knowing and becoming aware of what happens inside of them, then they can be responsible in the way that they maneuver the communication and their state in order to keep that balance. And while they keep that balance, then they can create that essence of harmony between them and the way that they deal with the rest of the stress of the world.
So I love what you said, so let me give a few practicalities coming from the new book, Conscious Men. And in this book, one of the 12 qualities of a conscious man, is he listens like the sky. Now, if you yell at the sky, what does the sky do? It just hears you. It doesn't respond at all. He listens like the sky. He's steady. He's sturdy. And most men think listening is like a female quality. Let's have a conversation, I'll listen. Actually, to be in the role of quietly listening and considering is the most masculine, one of the 12 qualities of increasing masculinity and raising testosterone, while at the same time, if you're listening to a woman, your female hormones will be stimulated as well, which is a feeling of empathy and compassion and understanding, and that's your role. You're not solving the problem, per se. If she's upset about something, you're not trying to talk her out of it. You actually have the wisdom to realize the real solving of the problem, and solving problems is our masculine side. The real solving problems is to listen like the sky, because when a man can listen without becoming agitated, without becoming defensive, without becoming argumentative, without getting angry, you are a master, you are a stud, you are a superman. You're everything a woman today needs more than anything, which is to feel safe in the presence of a man and share what her feelings are. So this is like the art of growing in love as men learn to be inclusive and since hold the space in a calm place where he can listen to her emotions and even say, help me understand that better, tell me more, and go more deeply into her emotions. These are new skills that I talk about and teach men so you don't get defensive, you don't argue back. If a woman is upset and you get upset in return, you just become a girlfriend. You become another woman. Your estrogen levels are surging. What happened to your testosterone? See, what testosterone does, and men have 10 times more, it's our role, the testosterone role, to maintain that space. We have a tremendous greater ability to do this than women. What testosterone does is when your testosterone goes up, you feel confident, I know what to do. It disconnects you from emotions. You have no emotional reactivity as testosterone's going up. As estrogen goes up, you get emotions. So I'm not saying men have to be perfect, but men have to know this is the goal, which is to create safety for women to listen. Now the flip side of this is cooperation, which is a woman should know that when she starts sharing feelings, it can sound like an attack. It can sound like criticism. It can sound like nagging. So there's an art to sharing feelings, and it's a bigger art than I can explain in a couple of minutes. You know, this is the secret to life and relationships is communication. But here's a few things. For example, my wife might be upset with me. She'll first take some time to find her love inside, okay, a little bit of centeredness, and then come to me and say, this is not a big deal. That's a secret phrase. This is not a big deal. I just want to tell you how I feel, and you don't have to say anything. I don't want you to fix it. I don't want you to solve it. I don't want you to say anything. Just listen, and I will appreciate it enormously. Because what we found is that when women talk about their feelings, oxytocin levels go up, stress levels go down. That's mostly what we do as good therapists, is create a safe place for someone to express their emotions. And so what we men have to do is, like in the traditional male role, the unconscious male, at least our role was to protect women. The conscious male has to realize that we have to protect women on an emotional level, which is so she can now explore her emotions out loud, which women have never done, really shared their vulnerable emotions with a man, because men would just become like women and get upset. Our brain has these mirror cells that reflect back whatever comes in. But if we use the front part of our brain, that's the conscious part of us, self-consciousness, we can learn to contain ourselves and be good listeners, and you will have the happiest woman in the world. That's just one of the many conscious traits that men have to learn to develop.
Wonderful. My God. I'm already excited. Two books. One is Staying Focused in the Hyper World, and the next one is Conscious Men. You can get from Amazon.com, or you can go to MarsandVenus.com and get those books. These are both new books that are out, and amazing research, amazing new information in them. And they're exciting. They're both very exciting, very supportive, very helpful with the aspect of relationship and family. So that's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Gray, so much for coming, for talking about the two books, talking about the new research that you have done. And I really hope that between all of the places you're going to go into the world, when you come back to the United States, that you'll come back to my show.
I'm looking forward to it, Foojan. You're an amazing woman, amazing therapist, a great teacher, and what an amazing conversation. I appreciated it so much, and thank you so much.
Thank you, and for the rest of the world that you're watching us, thank you for being with us, and until next week, create a wonderful day and a wonderful life. Goodbye.